Okay, you got me. I didn't think I was gonna get the thing, but I got the thing. 2 years too late. Today I'm trying out the Himi Jelly Gouache. I'm sure you've seen it before. It is this big heavy palette that contains a bunch of little dipping sauce packets filled with gouache paint that are really hard to open. And I originally thought when I first saw this that it was just a gimmicky thing to amuse children, and maybe it is. But I recently wanted to try this because I wondered if it would make me art journal more freely. Because when I'm art journaling, I tend to use acrylic paint, and here is something that I don't like about acrylic paint. It's messy, it's hard to push around and get fine details. When it dries on the palette, it's wasted. When it's almost dry on the palette, it turns lumpy. And I hate fumbling with the bottles, especially if they have twist caps. I'm not great with twisting. A lot of acrylics dry shiny and plastic looking. But what I do like about acrylic paint is you can always cover something up if you don't like it, and it's cool. These things seem irrelevant because this palette is not acrylic paint, but it does illustrate why I wanted to try it. The biggest draw to this palette is that there are no twist caps to fumble with. It is opaque enough to use in place of an acrylic, but at the same time, it doesn't dry permanently or have a tacky, shiny plastic finish. It also proposes its own problem, which is the reactivating layers. So if I paint over a previous thick layer, even when it's dry, it will reactivate and mess up the color I'm trying to paint on top of it. Or at least that's what people say. Listen, I am not a gouache painter. I don't know how to use it. I don't really have much patience for acrylic paint or oil paint in the first place, so any struggles that I really had trying out this palette were of my own limitations. I didn't really notice anything weird about the paint or its texture. It was really hard to try to reprogram my brain to work opposite to usual, like laying down the background, knowing that I could just slap the focal point on top of it afterward like it was no big deal. My biggest worry with gouache was reactivating the previous layers, so I was being really cautious. I was doing my backgrounds with thin washes like a watercolor, and then as I was doing closer and closer to the foreground, I was building up the thickness a little bit instead of starting thick and then staying thick the whole way through. I was letting some of the gouache be watercolor for a little bit. And I think because of that, I didn't really have a big issue with tainting my layers, reactivating colors underneath, and getting ugly mixes. It actually kind of worked out okay. You just have to be really careful about doing too many strokes. Like if you can get your brush nicely loaded and just lay it down in one stroke, it seemed to go on perfectly fine, no drama. So I definitely got the YouTuber reviews stuck in my head about it prematurely drying. I've been placing a piece of saran wrap on top of it to keep it a little less exposed to air, which I think has made it a bit messier than it needs to be. I've also been overly concerned with the cross-contamination thing and the colors. Yeah, so like a lot of other people, I have just been opening it, taking a little bit out on my plate or palette or whatever, and then putting the lid back on, which just makes it a different version of fumbling with bottles. My original hope for this would be that it was more like a watercolor palette. I would just have it open, the colors would be right there, I could just dip and reach for whatever I wanted, just like I do with watercolor. I could just do that. It doesn't matter if it dries prematurely because it reactivates really easily. I don't know why I'm being such a wuss, but I just gotta get over myself. I wanted to compare the colors between this supposedly inexpensive Himi gouache to my slightly more expensive Liquitex acrylic gouache. So I did a very simple Magnolia study using one and then the other, trying to match up the colors as well as I could. And honestly, there wasn't a huge difference. I did have to be a little bit more careful with the gouache one, right? Because of the reactivation, whereas the acrylic gouache dries like an acrylic. But otherwise, the result was extremely similar. And if anything, the Himi gouache had a little bit more color variation because the colors are just already there. And since I was hoping to use this more for art journaling, I didn't really need to have light fast pigments and expensive paints for that. Hoping that this would be a cheap alternative, or at least it would be if I could buy this literally anywhere other than Amazon with their surge pricing. I'm sure a ton of you have bought this years ago, so let me know in the comments if you've used yours, if it was everything you were hoping it would be, because I think I could actually make decent use with this one. Stay awesome, and thanks for watching.